Apple and Samsung are back in court suing each other. Turkey hijacks DNS servers to spy on citizens. And the inventor of the Palm Pilot is working on a computer that works like the human brain. All that and more coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Monday, March 31st, 2014. This episode of Tech News Today is brought to you by ShareFile. Enhance your workflow, send files of almost any size easily and securely with ShareFile by Citrix. Try ShareFile today for a 30-day free trial. Go to sharefile.com, click the microphone, and enter TNT. And by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used Apple and Android devices are worth at gazelle.com. Welcome to Tech News Today. I'm Mike Elgin.
And I'm Jason Howell.
Tech News Today explores the big stories of the day in conversation with some of the world's best journalists. Our guest co-anchor today is Jason Heiner, Global Editor-in-Chief of Tech Republic and Global Long-Form Editor of ZDNet for CBS Interactive. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks, Mike. Always a pleasure to share the airwaves with you.
You have a long title. It's almost like one of these, every once in a while we have an academic on, and their titles are always like a paragraph. Always nice to have you have to have two business cards, right?
I'm working on it. I'm working to see if we can make that a little longer next time, get in the academic range. We'll see what we can do.
Well, I appreciate it, and thanks for being our guest co-anchor today. Looking forward to an awesome show. Let's get right into it. Apple and Samsung are back in court today. Apple is accusing Samsung of violating 5 patents. Samsung is accusing Apple of violating 2 patents. What's different this time is that 4 of the Apple patents are part of Google's Android. So if Apple wins the case, it could theoretically force Google to change Android for all handset makers, not just Samsung. Apple is seeking about $2 billion in damages. To discuss this issue, we have a couple of reporters. One is Brian X. Chen, who is a tech reporter for the New York Times. Welcome, Brian.
Hey, thanks for having me here.
Glad you're here. And also Dan Rowinski, who is the mobile editor for Read Write. Welcome, Dan.
Hi.
So, Brian, who in your opinion has the stronger case in this particular patent case?
Well, it's tough to say. The trial has yet to start. One thing I would say is that Apple is going in here with sort of an advantage. Of the 5 patents that they brought into trial, the judge has already deemed one of them infringed by Samsung, so Samsung's already down one. And the other thing going for Apple was that they won the last trial, so I think among jurors, there's always a chance that Apple might be able to persuade them that Samsung has violated their patents once again. But we have to wait till we see what happens throughout the trial over the next month.
Now, Dan, I think a lot of viewers and listeners might be forgiven for thinking, well, we just did this a couple of years ago in 2012. Didn't that settle the patent issues between Apple and Samsung?
Well, you think it would, but this is actually the second trial, as Brian noted, and this covers a whole new range of devices, including the Galaxy S3, which was probably the most popular Galaxy S smartphone at the time. So this is sort of just it's not a retrial, but it's the next trial for Apple to go after another round of Samsung devices.
Now, Brian, these are mostly user interface type things, and some of these issues, especially by Apple, sound like really basic functions, like, for example, as I understand it, tapping on a link to go to another app or slide to unlock. These seem to me to be kind of basic, fundamental touch user interface elements that kind of shouldn't be patentable. What do you think?
I think it's going to be up to lawyers to argue this coming month about whether or not these features should be patentable. But these are pretty signature features of Apple's smartphones and tablets, and I think they chose these very specifically looking to try to make some pretty dramatic modifications to Android. It's tough to say whether or not it's going to really dramatically change the Android experience if these were to be deemed infringed by Samsung, since there's so many thousands of features that make a smartphone work. But the judge limited each party to 5 patents, so this is what they brought to the fight. This is what they thought was important to them.
Now, Brian, you mentioned some high-level expert witnesses expected from Apple, Samsung, and Google. A little bit of star power in there. Who are you who are you expecting to show up on the witness stand?
So I think the most interesting one to me is that Google is calling an Android executive named Hiroshi Lockheimer. He's a vice president for the Android division. And that's really interesting to me because Google's not even a defendant in this case. So it makes it even more clear that this fight is more about Google and Android than it is about Samsung, even though it's directly about Samsung. Other than Hiroshi, Apple is going to be calling Phil Schiller, the worldwide marketing executive for Apple, and Samsung is going to be calling Todd Pendleton, who's a chief marketing officer for Samsung.
Any chance Andy Rubin will be called?
Andy Rubin is the may call if necessary list, so that's always a kind of a maybe. It's sort of their last resort if they absolutely need to bring Andy Rubin into the trial. If you keep in mind, last time Scott Forstall was also part of the trial, or he was supposed to be, he was on the may call if necessary list, but he was never called. He's also on the list again this time. So these are the two big maybes, these pretty important executives for Apple and Google.
Now, what is the worst case scenario, Dan, in all of this? Is there any chance that any products will be blocked from sale? Is that even a possibility after this case?
You know, I don't really think so this time around. Apple tried to get injunctions against Samsung from the last case, and those didn't really stick. And overall, Apple has had a hard time getting injunctions to stick against Samsung at all. It had some success against HTC a couple years ago. It has had success overseas. But in the US, it's really hard to get injunctions and have them stick for a long period of time. This is really a lot about pride and profit for Apple. So they're looking for $40 per device here, but the actual injunction against devices probably won't stick. And the fact that these are older devices, Samsung Galaxy S3 is now, the 2 iterations behind. It's not really going to affect the consumer all that much.
Yeah,
yeah, I do.
Go ahead.
So I was going to say, I do agree. I think that this is ultimately Apple trying to, hurt Samsung in court for what it feels like is, overreaching in terms of borrowing from Apple designs. The stuff looks pretty minor when we look at it. I think the average person looks at it, as you were saying, Mike, swiping to unlock and things like this. Don't really add up. But if you add all these things together, especially the early, Galaxy S2 and S3, there were a lot of things where you can tell that the UI designers in Samsung were really kind of just shamelessly ripping off Apple design and copying it. Since then, they've actually moved away from it. I think they got hurt in court. They got beaten in court last time. So I think this is mostly a financial play and trying to hurt them, and a publicity play. I guess my one question for kind of all of you guys is this going to be viewed by the public as a fair fight, right? Because it's obviously Samsung, South Korean company, coming to the U.S. They sell a lot of product here, but they have to defend themselves here. But it's in Apple's own backyard and in San Jose, the trial is. And Apple is suing them rather than Google, even though, some of these things Google's responsible for as well. And so will the public view this as a fair fight, or will they view it as the court sort of taking care of their own? That's one of the things that I wonder, because otherwise, if the public does do it that way, then some of this backfires on Apple a bit.
Dan, why don't you take that one?
Well, I always thought it was odd that Samsung couldn't get a change of venue request, but torts are argued where the claim was made, so therefore it's in San Jose. As for the public, I mean, this is not the first time we've heard this, and I think there might be a little fatigue here. Us in the technology community will look at this and with sort of great interest and go, well, who's going to win this time, and what are the details, and what are the leaks sort of coming out of the trial? But I think the public just goes, well, there's another court case. How is it going to matter to me? And then in the end, it's not going to matter to the public all that much. It will matter to Samsung and Apple and their lawyers specifically, but the public, I think they might just shrug this one off.
Now, Brian, to the point of the public perception and focusing in on that segment of the public that was unfortunate enough to be dragged into jury duty for this case, are they likely to be swayed by certain things that give Apple an advantage? For example, Phil Schiller is the biggest star witness, and he's a very charismatic and persuasive human being. And also kind of a rock star in Silicon Valley where this case is taking place. And also, Apple has already won a small victory in the sense that there is a video that's about innovation that that Apple wants to play in the courtroom, and coincidentally, Apple is mentioned as a major innovator in this video, or the iPhone and the iPad specifically are mentioned. And Samsung asked that this be stricken and not allowed in the case, and that was overruled. Are factors like that also likely to give Apple an advantage here in the home court?
I think it's definitely a good point to note that this is Apple's home turf, and it's a bit easier to tell the Apple story to a domestic audience than it is for Samsung to tell an American audience their story, keeping in mind that Samsung is still like despite a really big company, it's still a relatively unknown story as to who their executives are, who their inventors are. Even though Apple is famously secretive, we know a lot more about that company as a culture and just the employees and executives in general. So I definitely think that's something that gives Apple an advantage. It's really going to be up to the lawyers. There's a lot of pressure on them to select a jury that they think is going to be impartial as possible to make a fair decision on this. Regarding the video that you discussed, I think what's interesting, they're talking about right now, is that Apple had done some interviews with the Wall Street Journal and some other publications prior to jury selection, and I think the concern from Samsung's side is that Apple's trying to really be aggressive with its message before they even start going into court.
Well, Brian, it's fascinating reporting you have done on this case, and we'll look forward to more reporting. This case should last about a month, I hear. So I want to thank you for coming on Tech News Today.
Thanks for having me. You
can find Brian X. Chen at nytimes.com and also on Twitter at bxchen. And Dan, I want to thank you for coming on as well. I really enjoyed your article as well.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Dan is at readwrite.com and also on Twitter at Dan_Rowinski. Yep. Well, in a sec, we're going to take a look at a Supreme Court case that's looking at software and patents. But first, I want to tell you about ShareFile. ShareFile is a site that will enable you to securely, safely, and easily send enormous files or small files via email with all kinds of benefits. When I first started using ShareFile, I did it because I wanted to send really large files. Of course, we send a lot of videos around and pictures and large files. Sometimes when you send a large file to a company, they've set up filters that will essentially block with a rule-based system any file that's over a certain size. And what happens is, if you're lucky, you get an error message back. If you're unlucky, you don't get an error message back, or the error message is swallowed by your own spam filter, and it can become a source of miscommunication. ShareFile prevents all that because when you send a large file, it's simply a link to a secure server that holds that file, which can be downloaded later. Now, some of the benefits that I referred to include the ability for you to say how many times the file is downloaded, exactly who can download that file, and also you can be notified when the person has downloaded the file, which is fantastic because some people will open your email and look at the file you're sending within 5 minutes. Others take 5 weeks, and it's really a waste of your time to keep nagging people, say, did you open it, did you open it? When in fact now with ShareFile, you can simply wait to be notified that they've opened it. Then you can contact them and say, okay, let's discuss the file. Very, very cool service. And it's also beautifully designed and very easy to use. So we recommend ShareFile. We use it ourselves for all kinds of things. And again, some people use it for very large files. Other people use it for secure files. Even my accountant now uses it because he discovered it through my wife, who uses it. But it's also great for any sort of file. You should never send an attachment over email. That's just if you think that's a secure and safe thing to do, you haven't been watching Tech News Today, because almost every day we have big, scary security stories about hacking, about phishing, all kinds of things going on, which ShareFile allows you to completely avoid. So sign up today for my 30-day free trial. There's no obligation at all. Go to sharefile.com, click on the microphone at the top of the homepage, and enter TNT. Remember, visit sharefile.com and type in TNT. We thank them for their support of Tech News Today, and you really have to try this. This is an excellent, excellent service that everyone should use. Well, the Supreme Court today will consider whether software is eligible for patent protection. It's a big question. But software that's part of user interfaces, like the patents in question today, coincidentally in the Apple-Samsung case, wouldn't be invalidated no matter what. Now, Jason, this is a big, big deal. I mean, I think there's a lot of people in the tech industry and in tech media, maybe you're one of them, who believes that software should never be patented. Where do you think this case should come out?
Yeah, boy, this is really important stuff. And I hate patent stories, I'll be honest with you, because a lot of it, it's a system that is kind of broken. The system itself, one of the big problems is the system itself doesn't move fast enough to handle the industry. And so by the time it moves, a lot of times the sort of issue's already been decided. And in some cases, you know, not necessarily for the better. So this is one of those cases, though, where they are trying to set, there will be precedent set here. And in terms of whether software should be patentable or not, you know, there are certainly cases where where there is the need for some kind of intellectual property protection. But I think it's overreaching currently, and it is going to be up to the Supreme Court to make a ruling on this. My fear is that how well will they understand the complexities of this issue? You know, those of us who have been talking about software for a decade or more still have trouble trying to wrap our heads around, you know, all the issues and complexity involved, and then try to, you know, come up with a you know, workable solution. I worry about how many of the Supreme Court justices are going to be able to wrap their heads around this. And be able to sort of come up with something that is workable, because there's a lot at stake with this. Not only things like the swipe to unlock and crazy stuff, which probably shouldn't be patentable, like in the Apple-Samsung case, but also to look at, you know, who would be the winners and losers no matter what you decide here, because there will potentially be winners and losers. And ultimately, you know, they've got to come to a place where the winners are innovators, and especially you know, small upstart video innovators, whereas you know, traditionally in the U.S., it's the big corporations that tend to get protected. They're big, they're reliable. They also, you know, contribute lots of money to the political system, and so inevitably they tend to be the ones who become protected in cases like this. So there's a lot at stake here. And I wouldn't be honest if I wasn't saying I'm nervous as to, you know, what direction this is going to go.
Well, your focus on the idea of the court, whether or not they can understand the complexities, is exactly the problem. That's exactly the problem that got us into this mess in the first place, because the patent law around software was decided in the 70s, and they didn't even think about code. Code wasn't even part of the ideas that they were looking at. They were looking at what the computer did. So if a computer did something, it basically mattered what it did and not how it did it, because they didn't even think about code as something that could be sort of patented for the specific methods in the code. It was the specific method the computer used, not the specific methods that the code used. And that's why we're in this horrible situation right now where, if you think about it, patent trolls exist, but why do they always zero in on software? Patent trolls could go after all kinds of industries where there's intellectual property, but they almost always zero in on software, precisely because software is an easy target. And it's precisely because the courts in the 70s didn't understand the complexities, as you said. So this is really a major case. The court case that the Supreme Court is looking at is Alice versus CLS Bank, and this is over some financial software, and it's you know, kind of an obscure thing, but it's also important to note that Google, Dell, Verizon, Microsoft, HP, and an engine manufacturer named Cummins are all weighing in with papers, because, as you pointed out, this is a big, big deal that's going to affect lots and lots of companies, billions of dollars at stake. It's going to affect the future of patent trolls and patent trolling. It's going to affect the future of litigation, the future of how devices can be invented. And back in the 70s, you think about it, there was, this is before the public was using the internet. This is before the PC revolution. This is before everything. Nowadays, you have these smartphones, and the number of patentable ideas in every smartphone numbers in the thousands, and they're all overlapping. There's rampant, under the current law, there's theoretically, tons of violations in every single smartphone. It's impossible to build a smartphone without trampling on hundreds or thousands of patents. So it's really an awful situation. It has to be sorted out. The Supreme Court is probably not the ideal place to do that. It has to be done in Congress, but this is an interesting case, and we'll be watching this very carefully. Here's another problem. You talked about the court understanding the complexity. They're going to consider this case for an hour today. An hour. Great.
Yeah.
So this is, and then they're going to go on to the next issue. So it's a mess, and we'll be looking at that very closely. And I'm not optimistic, frankly.
Yeah, I'm not either. It is a story worth following, and honestly, it's one that is hard to get people in the industry really interested in. We've written about this before, and not a lot of people like to read these kind of stories. But this is one that I would encourage people to get interested in and pay attention to, because if it does go in the wrong direction, it will have an effect on the future of the tech industry, and people should be prepared for it and be prepared to sort of speak up if it does go in that direction.
Well said. And we'll be watching it carefully here, and we'll do a follow-up after we learn more from what the Supreme Court decides. Well, we've been reporting on Turkey's creeping crackdown on access to Twitter and YouTube. When Twitter was first blocked by the government there, a viral campaign of graffiti spread through the country with Google public DNS information to get around the Twitter block. Quite an astonishing thing to see spray-painted 8.8.8.8 all over Turkey. Then the government blocked Google public DNS as well. But now Google claims that Turkey's government is going further. They're redirecting Turkish traffic to fake Google public DNS sites, presumably to log the IP addresses of anyone attempting to use them and then maybe go after those users. Other DNS server traffic is being rerouted as well. This is a kind of a dark turn of events. It's one thing, Jason, to block Google's public DNS. It's another to spoof it like some kind of 2-bit hacker and to sort of harvest the IP addresses. This is something we've only seen done by the Chinese government, and I hope this doesn't catch on, especially in a democracy like Turkey.
Yeah, man, I hate to say this, but it really is. We're sort of seeing the beginnings of kind of cyber warfare, right? I mean, this is kind of where we're getting to the point where people are doing sneaky things, and they're also, it just is the capability, the cyber attack and offensive abilities of countries is increasing exponentially. We have a long form feature coming up on this on Tech Republic about sort of the future of cyber warfare and the rules of engagement, because in real war there are rules of engagement, right? There are really no rules of engagement in cyber warfare at this time, and there are countries that are pushing for it, and there are countries that are pushing against it. Sadly, the countries pushing against it are countries like the US and the UK, which already have a lot of these capabilities, and they don't want to be limited in what they can do. But there are others as well, and it's needed because there are ways in which some of these things are going to start to happen. And it may sound like it's just cyber warfare, but it has effect in the real world, like, things like what's happening in Turkey. And, we're sort of at the beginnings of this. And I think for the sake of humanity, we have to hope that we come up with some guidelines in terms of that hold countries, in check and hold them responsible and accountable for the things that they do.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I'm glad that Google stepped forward and, routed around a whole lot of speculation and innuendo and just flat out came out and said that they've investigated it. And in fact, this is happening. So now we have some pretty solid information that this is happening by the Turkish government. So now we can take action. We can comment on it. There can be criticism, and people can figure out other ways around it, which include VPNs and Tor. So there are still ways to get around the block. It's just a little harder. And I think the Turkish government, for the most part, is responding to the graffiti campaign, which is unexpected and very effective. Well, Jeff Hawkins is one of Silicon Valley's most brilliant inventors and entrepreneurs. He's best known for inventing the Palm Pilot. I remember when the Palm Pilot was first a prototype device, codenamed Touchdown, I believe. Jeff Hawkins came out to the magazine I was working at, demonstrated it for us, and we could tell, all of us could tell right away that this was a revolution in the making. And in fact, it was. It mainstreamed the concept of the PDA concept or the connected organizer concept, and that led to the smartphone revolution. So at the foundations of the smartphone revolution that we're all heavily involved with stands Jeff Hawkins, and he is quite a brilliant person. Although his company, Palm Computing, was ultimately mismanaged to death by a number of people and companies, everyone expected Hawkins himself to go on to keep inventing in the smartphone space. Some of us hoped he would continue doing that anyway. But then about 9 years ago, he made a radical change in his career and devoted his life to reinventing computing itself. The Register's Jack Clark recently interviewed Hawkins and wrote an extensive piece about it, and he's with us here today to tell us what Jeff Hawkins is up to. Welcome.
Hello, Mike.
Glad you're here, and I really enjoyed your piece. Now, Hawkins' company is called Numenta. What is the company working on exactly?
The company is working on an artificial intelligence software that can allow you to make predictions out of data that you don't know anything about before it comes in. So it's like if I feed you a stream of stock market data, Jeff Hawkins' company is ultimately aiming to spot patterns or make predictions about that data without knowing where it comes from, but develop an idea that there must be some kind of higher representation here hidden in the numbers, much like our brains do when we come into stuff we don't understand.
Now, Hawkins came to this concept by studying the human mind and studying neurological sciences. Is that correct? Is this essentially an attempt to recreate the way that the human mind works?
Yes. Unlike many other artificial intelligence companies, Jeff Hawkins says that his approach is based on as much understanding as he has developed about how our neocortex works, whereas most other approaches are based on papers from the 1940s and 80s about a neural network, which is a sort of abstract implementation of how we think neurons in our brain work, but bear as much relationship to the kind of organic gray matter in our heads as, as another representation does to something real. It's a very different approach.
Now, Hawkins has an interesting relationship to the rest of the artificial intelligence community in the sense that he published a book about 10 years ago called On Intelligence, which I understand was extremely influential among the AI research community. But then his company and its direction is controversial and a source of criticism among that community. Can you explain the difference between the influence of his book and the lack of influence of his actual work?
Well, there are several problems here. One is that he has not published widely within the academic community. This is something I spoke to him about. I said, most of the people I've been trying to talk to about you don't want to be quoted because they think that your enterprise isn't credible because you haven't published.
It's a little Skype difficulty here. If you can repeat that last bit, please.
The criticism is that he hasn't published academic papers and he hasn't proved his approach against typical data sets. Now, he says that he's too busy to publish these papers because he's already interacting with the community. He's talking to people at places like DARPA or IBM to do his approach. And he says that he isn't publishing stuff on data sets because his approach simply won't work that way.
Now, Hawkins' approach is different from just about everybody else's, including those from consumer, companies like Google, Microsoft, and Facebook, which are all doing AI work. And as I understand it, and again, I'm not an expert in this field, but as I understand it, Hawkins is way more focused on replicating the human brain, whereas the other AI researchers tend to, sort of be influenced a little bit by that concept, but actually are going at it in a different way. Can you explain that better than I'm doing here? What is the real difference between Hawkins' approach and that of your average, ordinary, garden variety artificial intelligence researchers?
Well, there's no real garden variety artificial intelligence research, but I'll try to summarize. I mean, Hawkins' approach is based on not knowing anything about data and having something almost like a scaffold where you drape data over it and it will take on a form that allows you to manipulate it or recognize patterns or representations in it. Now, consumer web giants like Google or Facebook take a different approach where they try and build systems that can make use of the large amounts of data they've gathered on people, and from that, develop technologies that can allow them to make predictions. So Hawkins's approach stems from a theory about how he thinks our brain works, which is as yet unproven, but a very significant bet and a product of significant research. Whereas Google or Facebook's approaches are more about using past approaches that can manipulate and make predictions about data effectively and trying to refine those to a higher order system.
Now, are you optimistic about the potential success of Numenta and Jeff Hawkins in this whole enterprise? Do you think he's going to end up having a successful company or a successful breakthrough in AI?
I think all of the signs are that he has credibility where it matters. You know, I talked to Peter Norvig, who runs research at Google, and he's familiar with Hawkins' ideas and thinks that he has some good ones about time. I also spoke to Andrew Nin, who works at Stanford and also helped run Google. He said that, you know, Hawkins places an emphasis on things that the rest of the community hasn't quite figured out yet. I also spoke at unnamed people at some of the organizations trying to implement Hawkins' ideas in silicon chips. And they say that already they've got work in the labs, which is very promising. So my gut instinct is that he does have a clever piece of technology here, but he really has to demonstrate further credibility in the academic community for more people to work on it and for there to be enough research to make it really matter to the world.
And more importantly, credibility in the venture capital community if he wants to keep his company going, I would imagine.
Yeah. How about, hey, Jack, quick question. How about, you know, Google's been, as we all know, buying up artificial intelligence companies like crazy lately, and anything to do with, you know, AI and robots and all of these kinds of things. Could you see them targeting Hawkins' company? Do you see, you know, Numenta as a popular, you know, a popular target coming up for this? Because obviously, if Google's buying lots of it, and Google's competitors, especially Apple and Microsoft, are going to try to, you know, have some. They're going to try to find a counterpoint and you know, get their own, find their own AI companies. Do you see these guys as a major target for acquisition?
Well, there are two issues here. One is that Hawkins has poured a lot of his own money into this, and let's not forget he is wealthy. He was on a Forbes rich list until recently. He does have money. And the other is that he loves talking about this stuff. He goes around the world, he goes to companies, he goes to universities to talk and interact with the community. He's been to Google twice, IBM, DARPA. So if someone wanted to acquire Numenta, I imagine that Hawkins would say to them, I'm going to be still talking. I'm going to be engaging with everyone around the world about this in quite a public manner. And that, you know, who knows? It could be difficult. If you look at what Google's done, when they acquire people, it tends to go quiet for a while. You tend to not hear so much while they work on developing new technology. This is a typical thing with most of the big companies. So that could be a problem.
So in other words, they might not want to acquire the company because it comes with Jeff Hawkins, and Jeff Hawkins can't keep his mouth closed. Is that what you're saying? I want to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I think he really believes in this stuff, and he, as he says in the article, he wants to be a catalyst for machine intelligence, and you can't be a catalyst if you aren't allowed to interact with the community.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Google, of all the companies that let people talk and go out and, you know, be voices in the community, Google probably does it more than anyone. So it would seem that from Hawkins' perspective, Google might be, if there was a company that was going to be acquired, Google would be the most likely. Although, like you said, Jack, he's not in the position that, you know, he needs the money to pay off a bunch of investors. So that gives him a little more freedom.
And he's certainly been burned before, so that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. So I want to thank you for coming on, Jack, and explaining all this. It's a very complex issue, and it's rare that you see an in-depth article like yours that explains it so clearly. And I recommend that everyone go to the Register and read your piece based on the interview with Hawkins. And again, I thank you for coming on Tech News Today.
Thanks very much. It's been a pleasure.
Good to see you, Jack.
You can find Jack's work at theregister.co.uk and also on Twitter at @mappingbabel. Well, in a second, I want to tell you about a hidden feature in the Samsung Galaxy S5. But first, I want to tell you about Gazelle. Gazelle will buy your used gadgets. Now, why would you want to do that? The reason is they'll give you a lot of money for something that is not doing anything but gathering dust right now in a box or drawer. You know you've got these devices lying around. More than half of all users, according to a recent study, just have devices like this just sitting around, going nowhere. Meanwhile, the industry is cranking out better and better devices all the time, which you know you want. So the way to do that is to use your old gadget to help fund your new gadget. And the way that it works is you simply go to gazelle.com, that's Gazelle.com, find the item that you have in that drawer, enter in the condition, it's in good shape, bad shape, whatever it is, and then they'll quote your price. Now, if you don't send that in for a few weeks, 2, 3, 4 weeks, they'll continue to honor that price even if the value of that device declines during that time. Once they give you the quote, that is locked in for 30 days. So that's a very nice offer. And then they'll pay you fast by check, PayPal, or the best option probably for most of us is the Amazon gift card option, which gives you 5% more than they quoted you. So it's like free money there. Now, it's a risk-free offer, and again, Gazelle will wipe your data for free. So if you have any personal information on there, you should erase it yourself anytime you transfer your phone. But if you forget, or if you're not sure that you did a thorough job in wiping the data off your phone, don't worry about it, because Gazelle will do it in a very professional way to make sure that your personal information never gets in anyone else's hands. Gazelle has paid more than $100 million to more than 700,000 happy customers, and most of their items qualify for a free box. It's super easy, super fast, no hassles, and I recommend it strongly. I use them myself, and I'm always happy with how it goes. I'm always happy with the amount of money they give me for my old gadget. I'm always happy with how easy it is, and it's just an incredible service, and I recommend it very highly. So find out what your Apple or Android device is worth. Take a minute, go to Gazelle.com and find out. And you should do it now, because your device may lose value the longer you wait. Well, a Malaysian smartphone blog called Soya Singkao, I'm almost certainly pronouncing that incorrectly, discovered that the Samsung Galaxy S5 has a hidden baby crying detector feature. It only works when the phone is paired with Samsung's Galaxy Gear smartwatch. When you leave your Galaxy S5 in the baby's room, which, by the way, might wake up the baby and cause it to cry, the watch will vibrate when the phone detects crying. What do you think, Jason? Are you going to run out and grab a Galaxy Gear watch to have this as a baby detector? Is this is kind of a crazy feature, and it's weird that they haven't even mentioned it. It had to be discovered.
Well, first of all, cool idea. Kudos to who thought to do that, right? Having had babies and used baby monitors and all of that, cool idea. Implementation, little sketchy though, because one, in this day and age, how many people are going to leave their phone in the baby's room, for a half an hour, an hour, if you're really lucky, longer than that, and not have their phone with them? Almost would work the other way around, right? Leave the watch, take the phone, and that would seem to be the better implementation. And like you sort of alluded to already, Mike, if you're going to do this, you better make sure you put that phone on silent, because the last thing you want is the phone ringing, or even alerts going off, and that end up waking up the baby. So I like the concept. Not necessarily crazy about the execution on this one.
Also, make sure that the devices aren't too far away from each other, right? Because the Galaxy Gear, I don't believe, has Wi-Fi or any sort of mobile network capabilities. So it's pairing through Bluetooth. So don't go too far from the baby's room.
100 feet in best case scenario. And
there you go.
What's funny about this is once you dig into the details of this inside the software, it gives you all kinds of parenting advice, like don't leave your baby alone in a building. This is no substitute for parenting, et cetera. So there's some pretty hilarious disclaimers in there. So sage advice from Samsung. I don't know. I think this is kind of a cool idea. If you're at somebody else's house and you want to put the baby down in another room or whatever, the baby monitor isn't there. In a pinch, it might be a good idea. I don't know. It's kind of cool. They're thinking of new ways to use the Galaxy Gear watch, which is a good thing. So
cool idea.
Can't blame them for trying. And the fact that they didn't publicize it that much is okay, too. They knew that people would discover it and use it. And, they're getting into the, baby-parent relationship, so they probably don't want to make too many claims about how awesome it is. Well, Jason, I want to thank you for coming on as our guest co-anchor today. It's always fantastic to have you on Tech News Today.
Glad to be here. Thanks, Mike. Enjoyed it, as always.
All right, thank you. Well, there are many ways to subscribe to Tech News Today, and we recommend them all. One of them is to go to twit.tv/TNT and subscribe to the audio or video versions. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/TechNewsToday. And you can follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV. And we want to hear from you as well. Please send us an email at tnt@twit.tv, and also don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific and every weeknight. My name is Mike Elgin. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you tomorrow.